Oh baby, we're back. So Atomic Heart was one of my most anticipated games when it launched back in February of this year. It featured an incredibly unique art style. It promised to be a really unique first-person shooter, one that brought back memories of BioShock Infinite, and I was just here for it. I was super pumped, and unfortunately when the game eventually launched, it left me with some mixed emotions and feelings. Not that it's bad or anything, it's just not great. It's pretty good. And listen, part of the reason that the reception at launch was a little mixed was because there were some performance issues, and I think expectations and marketing were a little out of whack compared to what we actually ended up getting. So today I figured we'd go back, see what the game is like now with a fresh set of eyes. And also I want to talk to you about the DLC, which Focus Entertainment and the developers over at Moonfish were very generous in letting me try early. That's right, on the day that this video goes up, there is a new story DLC launching for this game. I've played it, I have some very strong thoughts about it. As to whether those are positive or negative, I'm gonna make you wait until the end of the video, so gotcha. This video is sponsored by Logitech G and the Astro A30 headset. With 27-hour battery life, wireless and wired connectivity, great sound quality, and a stylish design to boot, the Astro A30 headset is a phenomenal choice if you're in the market for a new pair of gaming headphones. Check them out at the link below. Now, beyond performance, my biggest frustration with Atomic Heart was that the world was so interesting, and yet we never really got to explore it to its fullest extent, which was really frustrating. Like, so much of what we see, so much of the architecture, the character designs, everything is just gorgeous and captivating, and yet we don't really get given the opportunity to explore it or get to know it. What we are given are very narrow levels like the one I'm exploring right now, which we navigate while taking on enemies that are causing us trouble and coming at us with various attacks that are captivating and definitely keep us engaged and busy. But frankly, once we've reached a lull and things start to slow down, there isn't much reason to continue looking. Like, we've kind of seen everything there is once you go through the first couple of areas. Like, there's not a whole lot. Hold on, I'm a little distracted, Mr. Robot, forgive me. Oh God. Also, this search mechanic is like Fallout 4 on steroids, and I kind of love it. I know it's like kind of mindless, it just pulls everything out of it, but it looks cool. But if I pull up the map here, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like, there are a couple of little areas of interest. These are what are known as testing grounds, and they're basically small puzzle arenas. But everything on the surface is more of what you've already seen. It's a lot of copy and pasted buildings splattered throughout the map, kind of like you see here. You might go in and find a crate like that, which gives you some materials you can use to upgrade your weapons or your character. But beyond what you're seeing here, there really isn't much on the surface at all. And beyond those outside areas, most of the game, I would say probably 65 to 75% of it, takes place within various laboratories or buildings that look kind of like this one, where you are expected to simply go from room to room, hallway to hallway, progressing slowly. And I'm just gonna be honest, this world that they've crafted is so interesting, I don't really want to get to know it within these hallways and tightly designed rooms with like exposition written in a language I respectfully don't read. To me, it's just really baffling that so much of this game takes place in the least interesting areas of the world that they give you to explore. But having said that, in the original game, there are tons of huge boss fights that are unique and interesting, feature all different mechanics that really put you to the test. These things are as pretty as they are engaging. And honestly, I think they are the highlight of the base game, even if occasionally I ran into technical problems, which I'm told are now patched, so you don't have to worry about that. And speaking of engaging boss fights, this game is tough. If you play it on any one of the 3 difficulty options that they give you, you're probably going to die many times. There's an easy, normal-ish, or regular, I guess, default difficulty, and then a hard mode. The hard mode is insane. Mad respect to anybody who finishes the game on that. The regular mode, I would classify as probably a typical game's hard mode, and then the easy mode is probably what most people would expect from the normal mode. Basically, this game's just really freaking difficult. And basically, my long-lasting opinion of this game is that it's pretty good, not great, but for the right price, it's certainly worth playing. Available on Game Pass, it's a no-brainer, and at the current sale price of $40, I think it's a steal. However, I am going to be honest with you, I just loaded back into a save I had right towards the end of the base game, just to show you a later section. And this area you're not allowed to actually get to. I'm not supposed to be in here, which is why it looks really weird, and why it's like glitching out. That's because those doors are supposed to be closed. I'm not supposed to be here. So yeah, that's weird. That was a bug I ran into back when the game first launched, and it's still here. You see, if I hit this, then the door's closed. So oops, it's still here, guys. But you know what? Let's say that you played the game back at launch and you're looking at trying it again or seeing what this DLC has to offer. Well, you can either continue your game or just hit new and then select Annihilation Instinct Play. There's going to be 3 more DLC as well, but we have no idea what those are. However, if you choose to play this, it will tell you, are you sure you want to continue? We hit yes, and then you can choose which difficulty you want to go through on. So you don't technically need to have finished the base game to play the DLC, but it's strongly encouraged since there are story spoilers. Once you select that, there's a little slideshow movie that plays, which has a lot of women in scantily clad outfits. It's very strange, even though that doesn't really have anything to do with the plot. So it's just a little weird. And then it starts with, frankly, one of the most memorable DLC openings of any game that I can remember. I freaking love the weird animatronic automaton puppet thing that they do with a lot of the NPCs and enemies in this game. Although, unfortunately, this is about as twisted and creepy as this DLC is going to get. This really is probably the most memorable moment of the entire thing for me, unfortunately. But now I'm sure you're thinking, oh, well, Luke, there must have been so much in this DLC that just wasn't interesting. Maybe that's just a really bad sign. Well, frankly, there's just not much to this DLC, like at all. And even a lot of what is here feels like copy and pasted bloat. I mean, the first major section is you going through a large room, walking through a bunch of pathways that you have to raise and lower to get to the next platform, to raise another platform, to move on to the next platform, all just to pad out time for you to have a conversation with an NPC narrator. They could just quickly communicate all of this by way of a cutscene or by way of a conversation while you do something more interesting, but instead they pad out this sequence by having you walk along pathways doing nothing. It's really, really strange and frankly uninteresting. Once you get out of that area, you are introduced to your first series of enemies in the DLC, and you will have to fight these using a melee weapon because the game strips you of all of your good stuff if you choose to start the new game like I did. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's pretty normal for DLC to come along and ask you to kind of start fresh just so there's something interesting to throw at you. But if you were hoping that this DLC would just take all of your abilities and weapons from the base game and automatically crank it if you choose to play with the new game, it just doesn't. And like I said, this game is difficult and the designers know that. So they will send swarms of enemies at you all at once, and this will get totally insane. Like, I can't even begin to describe how hectic and chaotic some of these sequences are. A few of them I bashed my head up against the wall with for so long, I just grew extremely frustrated, and it didn't feel like the fun kind of difficulty you get with a lot of games. It felt like an annoying kind of difficulty where it didn't always feel fair. It didn't always feel like I was the one totally screwing up, though to be fair, a lot of the time I was the one screwing up. But more often than not, it just felt like, how am I supposed to keep track of 20 different enemies throwing ranged attacks at me all at the same time? I don't even know where to begin. Eventually I got through it all, of course, but it was mad difficult. But I think the biggest defense of the DLC is that the basic task you are asked to repeat countless times is simply taking one of those little spheres they call beads or BDs and placing it into these tubes. They ask you to do this at least a dozen times throughout the DLC, which only lasted me about 2.5 to 3 hours, 4 hours, I would imagine, if you're playing on the hardest difficulty. And it's just baffling that the entire DLC is basically built on an extremely boring and mundane fetch quest where you go find a ball and put it in a tube. I understand they explain it away narratively in a semi-creative way, but it doesn't make it any more interesting. When you boil it down, this entire DLC is simply about fetching balls and putting them in tubes and then fighting a big boss that's primarily made of balls. And unfortunately, this boss encounter is really the only interesting thing that they have to show for the entire DLC. And I would not show him normally, but I can't discuss him without also mentioning that he bugged out a few times as well. This encounter right here with the same exact boss, just painted red this time, literally just a reskin of the same encounter, was actually bugged. You see, he doesn't have any health bars that popped up, and it turns out he's invincible until those health bars appear. So I bashed my head against the wall fighting this guy, draining all of the ammo that I had, and started whacking him with melee weapons, only to realize it wasn't doing anything. And upon a death and reload, I started dealing damage. You see, just like this. This is what it's supposed to look like when you have a health bar and when he can take damage. Otherwise, you just can't do anything. Listen, there is a lot that's been improved. I've seen some of the stuff that they have fixed from when the game launched back in February to now, but this game is still a little bit clunky, which is why I don't recommend it at full price. Beyond that, like I said, I think a lot of the expectations and marketing didn't line up with what the game actually provided. If you go into this expecting a BioShock-like experience, you're probably going to be pretty disappointed. But if you go into it looking for a AA style first-person shooter in a really interesting world, all wrapped in a package of a game that I think shows a lot of potential for its sequel, though at this point is just laying down a basic groundwork, I think you can have a pretty good time, especially if you get it at a good price. And probably the best price on the market is no additional cost, like on Game Pass. So frankly, if you're a Game Pass subscriber and this looks interesting to you, I recommend you try it, though I would not say that the DLC is worth buying or paying money for at this point. It's 2.5 hours of fetch quests and a single boss fight that's copy and pasted. And while I would have hoped that the narrative would justify its purchase, it's as confusing as it is nonsensical. And frankly, it seems to exist entirely to set up the next DLC, which I'm sure is going to be more impactful. I don't know what their plans are for the DLC at this point. Maybe they're hoping to do 4 story DLC that tied together create a 10-hour expansion basically. And at that point, maybe it is worth checking out. But as of right now, 2.5 hours just doesn't really cut it as far as I'm concerned. As of today, I don't know what they're going to be charging for this singular DLC, but if you want to upgrade and buy the Atomic Pass, that's a full $40, and that will give you all 4 of the DLC, which means that they're probably charging $10 for this thing. And personally, I just think there's better ways to spend $10. I just don't find this DLC that remarkable, unfortunately. But let me know what you think of Atomic Heart. Have you gone back and tried it since it launched, or have you never tried it? And are you going to decide to try it now that you've seen this video with me bashing it a little bit? Let me know in the comment section. As always, I love you guys very, very much. I wish I had better news to report today with this DLC, but unfortunately, this one is just a swing and a miss. Save your money for something else. But with that, thank you for watching. I love you all dearly, and I'll see you in the next video. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.